Chapter 3. Ghost in the Woods. Grasping, frantically searching for anything to hold, but all Lillian found was air. After what felt like decades, Lillian finally dug her fingers into one of the planks beside her. Adrenaline racing, senses heightened, she dangled above the great chasm, desperately looking for a way to pull herself up. Now the wind was not her friend, as it seemed to have picked up even more. It blew her body around, all the while flinging the bridge around like a swing, making it impossible for her to even attempt to grab the supporting ropes that hung just outside her reach. She thought of yelling for help, but knew no one was remotely close enough to hear. Everyone was at the party, waiting for her. How ironic. Left to die by her own birthday party. Swoosh! Lillian felt a quick blast of air rush inches past the left side of her face. That was not the wind. She looked in the direction to find a small, silver-colored rope in front of her. Not wanting to relinquish her grip for a possibility, she tested the tension by leaning her head against it. Taut. She was running out of options and couldn't hang there forever, especially since the wind was growing stronger. She counted down. 3, 2, 1, lunge. Her left hand grabbed the new line of salvation. She began hauling herself up slowly but surely. She heard several rips and tears redecorating her dress, but there was nothing to be done about that now. By the time she had hoisted her body onto the remaining wooden planks, the wind had died down. She gave herself just a moment to realize her safety and then quickly found her way to solid ground. Once she caught her breath, she came to her senses. Someone had saved her. She examined the silver cord that had saved her life. It was taut for a reason. As she followed the rope with her eyes across the bridge, she saw it was attached to an arrow that was stuck deep into a tree. Back the other way, the rope had been tightly secured around another tree about 10 feet behind the forest line. Now, Lillian was no fool. Whoever made that shot was either very lucky to have missed her head or an expert marksman. She was betting on the latter. And the rope would have had to have been tied to the other tree before it was shot. So whoever made that shot not only positioned the rope perfectly past her head by mere inches, but also knew the exact distance from tree to tree. Lillian started to run through her head anyone she knew who could have made such a precise shot. There was Sir Alger, trainer of the Royal Archers, but he would be back at the castle. Her cousin Marcus was rather talented with the bow as well, but he was away with Jacob. There was that one boy from town who had won the archery contest last year. What was his name? She couldn't remember, but why would he be out here during the celebration? He wouldn't, which still left the question, who? Well, it was something she would have to ponder later because she desperately needed to get back. Lillian was sure her father was searching for her by now, having exhausted all means to delay her mother's grand unveiling of the birthday cake. She would also have to change, giving a glance down at her once pristine gown, now adorned with several tears and painted with dirt and grass stains. Ophelia's going to kill me. She hiked her dress up to keep from tripping and jogged back towards the castle. Along the way, she looked around, unable to shake the feeling of someone watching her, but she never saw anyone. She splashed her way through the creek and grabbed her shoes, not wasting time to put them on. As she reached the wall where the passage was, she bent down to hit the same familiar pebble in the stone. Slowly, the weighted pulley system shifted, and a portion of the once uniform wall swung inward. Lillian took a step inside, but couldn't shake a feeling of being watched. She turned to look one more time and couldn't believe what she saw. About 100 yards away in the forest, something white floated a few feet off the ground. Then a small red eye twinkled at her right before disappearing behind the tree. Lillian could not erase that image from her head as she started up the passage stairs. There was no way that she had just saw the ghost, right? She had heard the stories and scoffed at them before, but now? There had to be a logical explanation. She couldn't remember hearing of anyone seeing the ghost during the daytime. Was it the ghost that had saved her? How could he have fired an arrow? And why would it choose to show itself to her now? She had been in that forest 1,000 times and had never felt like she had been being watched like today. Or had she? Now that she thought about it, there had been a few times that she had gotten the same prickly feeling on the back of her neck, but she had just attributed it to the wind or such. She didn't know now, but she'd have to think about it later because she was nearing the top of the stairs. She made it to her room and quickly decided on a light blue dress, and if anyone asked why she had changed, she'd say it was because there was cream on it from Andrew. As she went downstairs to rejoin the celebration, she caught her father's wide-eyed, "Thank the fairies you're back" glance, followed by "Come save me." He waved her over, and she made her way through the crowd, who was back to enjoying the festivities. "Sorry to be gone so long," Lillian apologized as she greeted her father with a kiss on the cheek. "Not to worry, dear," the king reassured her with a wink. "Your mother and I were just discussing that maybe this year you're too old for a cake. Fairies know there's already plenty of food." Yeah, you're probably right," Lillian admitted, recognizing the game. Her mother had tried to do this for a couple of years now. The queen liked to baby her children, as anyone in the kingdom knew. Not that she spoiled them, but she was just not ready for them to grow up, especially Lillian, her first. Snow White just wanted to be reassured that her efforts were wanted and that she was not imposing. "I'm sorry, honey. I've just been so busy with the council and making sure your brother's keeping up with his lessons," said the queen. She knew the game too, but that didn't change the fact that she needed to be appreciated. "It's okay, Mom. But just so you know, I was really looking forward to it this year. With me being 18 and all, as long as the cake didn't try to eat me and burn down the kingdom." Lillian gave her mom a sly smile. "Were you really looking forward to the cake?" Snow White asked. Lillian knew what that meant. "Of course. I know it's something really important to you. Some of them are even edible." She started looking for the obvious entrance of a cake. "Pierre!" The queen called for the head chef. That was the cue. Everyone started singing Birthday Merriment. "Today is the day we celebrate your birth. We're all here to show just how much you're worth. Eat a piece of cake, play a couple games. Everyone rejoicing, singing out your name. Lillian, Lillian, merry birthday, Lillian." A huge cake rolled out from the back of the party. The crowd had to part about 10 feet just to let it through. The towering pastry was a beautiful lilac frosted confection with indigo swirled trim and consisted of several layers. The outermost rose in a spiral all the way up to the top. So far, the only magic Lillian could make out was the 18 candles rotating up the ramp, and once at the top, they dropped down into the middle of the cake only to reappear at the bottom of the ramp to start the whole process over again. It would definitely make blowing them out a trick. But as the cake slowly approached her, the candles slowed down too and finally stopped as the cake halted in front of her. Lillian looked at her mom, who was beaming now, as apparently the cake presentation was going off without a hitch. Lillian leaned over to blow out the first candle at the bottom of the ramp, and to her surprise, the rest of the candles started to go out in succession, all the way to the top until the very last candle suddenly shot out a small display of fireworks. This drew a couple of cringes from the crowd and even the king, as they'd seen the queen's creations go awry before. But as the last firework fizzled out, everyone relaxed and eagerly anticipated tasting the queen's newest confection. After thanking her mother for the beautiful and surprisingly tasty cake, Lillian rejoined her friends Joffrey, Sophie, Elizabeth, who everyone called Lizzie, and Princess Olivia and Avery. Lillian wasn't as close to the two princesses as her other friends, simply because she didn't see them that often. Usually they stayed in touch only at occasions like this or through letters that they would write back and forth. Forming a close bond with someone was hard if you had to wait a few days for a reply. But since the princesses were so close in age, they did share a lot in common, especially when it came to royal duties. Venting was hard to do to your regular friends who wanted nothing more than to trade places with you. None of them resented Lillian, mind you. They just couldn't find the problem with having to entertain dignitaries at various functions in fancy dresses eating fancy food, especially when the dignitaries included Duke Taylor and Sir Chandler. Sure, they were nice to look at, but were absolute bores when it came to conversation. So Lillian found solace in writing both Olivia and Avery because they understood that being a princess was not all it was portrayed to be. "What did your mom do to Andrew?" asked Joffrey, always the nosy one. "I'm not sure," replied Lillian. "I went upstairs to fix my hair. Did any of you get hurt during the chaos?" Sophie doesn't hesitate. "Sir Laurel pushed me into the doorway while trying to get out. So much for his chivalry." "I'm sure he was pushed himself, Sophie," Lizzie defended her crush. "He didn't even apologize, though," Sophie retorted. I have seen him overlook a couple of ladies in need in the times I've seen him, Olivia piped in. Not that I'm judging. I'm just saying. Olivia saw Lillian more than Avery, one because they were closer, and two because they were family. Whatever. You're all just jealous that he fancies me over you, Lizzie concluded. He's all yours, Lizzie. Sophie winked at the others, and they all had a giggle. There was a small pause when finally Avery could take it no longer. So, what's the deal with the bomb? I thought we had either killed or imprisoned all the Danian rogues. Apparently not. Joffrey always had to state the obvious, too. Avery scoffed. I realized that. What I meant was, where did they come from? And how did those stinky rogues get in here anyway? I thought your dad would have better security for your party. Some of the girls rolled their eyes. It wasn't that they didn't like Avery, but she could come off as a little too grown up and a know-it-all for their taste. They didn't blame her, though. She had always had to be a little more responsible in her family because of her father's absence. Her mother was usually busy taking care of the kingdom's affairs, which caused Avery to have to step in to a mother role of sorts, especially for Layla, but also for Jacob, as he only just recently assumed more kingly responsibilities. Plus, his being away for so long affected Avery more than she'd cared to admit. So, most of the girls just ignored her haughty comments, knowing that while she meant well, she just had a hard time communicating it sometimes. I'm sure Henry and my dad will take care of it, Lillian said, reassuring her friend. My dad has already started a list of who to interrogate. He just didn't want to ruin my party, so he's not acting like it's a big deal. But believe me, King Charming can be very, let's just say persuasive when it comes to protecting his family and kingdom. Lillian had only overheard her dad lose his temper once, and that was a few days after the victory of Zoldain. She was in the secret passage when she had heard shouting. He had been questioning a prisoner about the hidden faction of Danian rogues who had infiltrated the Volante kingdom. Their sole purpose was to burn the kingdom to the ground to honor their lord who would someday return. The voice of her father and the whimpering of the captive was enough to make her continue on her way. She had never seen that side of her dad before. Part of it scared her. The other part made her feel safe, like he would do anything to protect his family and stand up for what he believed in. The party resumed without any further interruptions, and as the sun began its descent, the crowd thinned, quite a few of them leaving just hoping to remember where they lived. The king and queen always offered their abode to Queen Aurora and her family, as well as the Charmings. Both declined. Aurora had an important council meeting to get back to, and the Charmings always enjoyed traveling under the stars. They had been night owls since the whole midnight thing. Everyone said goodbye as the servants started to the great undertaking of cleaning up. Lillian was eager to see their guests off so she could go talk to Alondra about everything that had happened in the forest. She would find out what that ghost really was and who had shot that silver arrow. She owed him her life.